do want to thank you all for joining us today. I do want to make sure that we are very conscious of everybody's time and get started on time, because I know that some of us are using our lunch break for the session. But I did want to thank everybody for joining us today, and happy St. Patty's Day to everybody. We are slated for about 45 minutes today, and we will be monitoring the chat. So feel free to submit any questions that you may have regarding the session through the chat. If you see me look up, you're going to see me. I've got a monitor up here where it's not that I'm looking away or looking at somebody. My monitor's up there, so I'm going to be helping moderate today's session. We're also going to be recording today's session. So if anybody has to step out and needs a copy of it, we will be making that available to everybody. But again, welcome. My name is Scott Hare. I'm going to again be one of the presenters and moderators for today's session. I also want to be able to tell you a little bit about myself. I've worked the past 2 decades in delivering operational efficiency solutions to public K-12, higher ed, and private school organizations, as well as partnering with state-level business and maintenance associations. I joined the team at ClassWallet at the beginning of the year, really with the sole objective of continuing to bring value to those that work to support the learning environment in schools. Many of these people are really the unsung heroes that are supporting a lot of the back office processes within school operations, be it your maintenance teams, your accounts payable teams, your bookkeepers, your custodians, clerks, you name it. Those are the folks that really keep schools running on a day-to-day basis. So I'm excited to join this group here, and want to just kind of showcase a little bit of today's agenda. I am going to be introducing our presenters, as well as then going into a high-level overview of who is ClassWallet. So if you're not familiar with ClassWallet, I'll give you a quick introduction. Then we're going to get into the bulk of today's presentation and get into Seth Sansing and their Toledo Public Schools use case and how they've been able to leverage ClassWallet and gain efficiencies to their back office processes. We're also going to give you guys a quick introduction to the platform itself, and Melody is going to be walking through that. So as we get into kind of today's presenters, I do want to introduce them. We've got Seth Sansing, as I alluded to. He's the Director of Accounting and Finance at Toledo Public Schools. A little bit of background around Toledo. They've got 23,000 students, spanning across 55 different locations, and they've got 1,400 users on the platform today. And Seth has been with the district for over 28 years, and I'm sure during that time period, he's seen a lot of changes. And he's held a number of different numerous hats and roles within the organization during that time period, but most recently, for the past 3 years, as Director of Accounting and Finance. And he's got 18 members on his team today. He's got 4 accounts payable specialists, 1 account supervisor, 1 accounts receivable specialist, 1 invoice control coordinator, as well as 1 invoice control accounting clerk. So thank you, Seth, for joining us today. And he's going to be specifically talking about how his district is managing and distributing special funds. And those special funds are behavioral modification funds, student teacher stipends, Head Start grants, as well as early childhood funds. So he's going to get into more specifics related to how they're managing those. We also have with us Melody McDonald. She is Vice President of Business Development at ClassWallet. She has worked with ClassWallet for more than 6 years, and during that time, she's worked with more than 200 school districts across the U.S. and worked with several state and local educational agencies on best practices to distribution of funds to families, schools, as well as teachers. And most recently, and if you guys dialed in a little early, you may have heard Melody talk about this. She's been really closely watching all the aspects related to the ARP, the American Rescue Plan. Those funds that are starting to come available to a lot of organizations. And she's been working with LEAs on strategies to help get that funding in the hands of people closest to the students, AKA the teachers, to help assist with addressing learning loss in education. So I'm sure she's going to be happy to share some of those experiences and strategies, but glad to have her participating in today's session. So a little bit about ClassWallet. We started in 2014, and we are a purchasing efficiency platform designed exclusively for the unique needs of educational institutions. We're working with over 3,600 schools, and that represent over 2.5 million students. How did ClassWallet actually come to fruition was actually the brainchild of our CEO, Jamie Rosenberg. Jamie actually started one of the first crowdfunding platforms for teachers. And that platform was adoptaclassroom.org. And during that time period, Jamie realized that it's really easy collecting and fundraising to get teacher money or teacher supplies, but what he found was a huge disconnect in then getting the money in the hands of the teacher to then go spend it on items that they need to support the classroom environment. That was a very cumbersome process, very heavy paper intensive process. And at that point, that's when he left Adopt the Classroom and said, we've got to fix this challenge over here. How do we make it easy for teachers to then take advantage of the funds that are actually being procured and provided and distributed to them? So that has been a part of our corporate DNA, is how do we make it easy for teachers to be able to access funds and then showcase the back office fiduciary responsibility and oversight needed to ensure that those funds are being spent for the fit and purpose. So we started again in 2014, and through that time period, we've had a growing adoption of our platform. Here's just a sampling of some of the clients that we're working with. We're working with districts with 100 students to some of the largest districts in the country with over 300,000 students. You'll notice in the slide that we've got representation of districts in Florida, districts in North Carolina, districts in Utah, in Louisiana. So we've got a great platform and growing client base and adoption. So now I'm going to get into a little bit more specific related to, what type of solutions are we providing? So our first solution is TeacherWallet. And this is actually going to be the focus of today's session and what Seth's going to be talking about, what his district has been able to accomplish with using TeacherWallet. At a high level, this enables teachers to purchase goods and supplies to help achieve successful student outcomes, just plain and simple. We also, on the flip side, showcase and realize that there was a growing need that within a lot of school operations, that your maintenance teams are making a lot of unplanned low dollar purchase transactions that are creating a lot of paperwork and that are very time consuming. So we launched Maintenance Wallet earlier this year to help enable maintenance crew members to easily purchase supplies that they need to complete a work order to keep schools up and running. We also rounded out with Family Wallet. This really just enables families to access appropriated funds outside of the schools. We do this while providing the finance office all of the oversight, control, and data that they need to then showcase how are these funds being distributed and managed, and then turn around and say that they are being spent for the intended purpose and function of what they're being allocated for. So with that, one of the questions, we did want to make this as interactive as possible. And, as you guys have any questions, please feel free to answer or ask those questions in the chat. But I did want to, before we get into the bulk of the session today with Seth telling his story, is how are you managing the distribution of special funds? And remember, special funds could be Title I funds, behavioral modification funds, early Head Start funds, anything like that. So I'm going to start a poll with that question today, and you should see that come up on your screen. So how are you distributing these special funds today? Are these being managed by each individual school site, or are they being centrally managed? Or is it a combination of site and central office? Or maybe, hey, Scott, I really just don't know. So I'll give it a little bit more time for everybody to be able to respond. And then I'll share the results so everybody can see that. Okay. Anybody lingering out there that wants to vote anymore? All right. So it looks like the majority of people, it's a combination of site and central office. And we've got one person out there that says that each school is responsible for the distribution of funds. So good to know. Thank you guys for sharing that. And now I want to get into the bulk of today's session. And thank you again, Seth, for joining us and agreeing to share your success at Toledo Public Schools. I did want to, just kind of get the conversation going. And Seth, can you describe and walk us through what the process was like, managing and distributing those special fund items prior to implementing TeacherWallet?
Yeah, all these funds that we were using, in specifically, I'll kind of jump ahead, but we're using the platform for special funds like behavior modification, and we get the stipend for student teacher honorarium when a teacher has a student teacher. And in the past, we would give that money right as a special payroll check to the individual teachers. And we kind of thought, well, there's really no oversight of how that money is spent. So this provided us with a whole different way to do that. And when you think about it, when you're doing something through a payroll check, that teacher's getting taxed on that. I may not be taxed on a lot of money there, but still, I don't know about you, but I don't want to give the IRS any more dollars. So this looked like a perfect fit for something like that.
Got it. And when you think about the process beforehand, how much time was involved from an administration standpoint, and how many people were involved in the process?
I think you're talking about it touching potentially 7 different people, from the teacher to the purchase order originator, right through the approval process, through the workflow process, and sometimes with the workflow process, a purchase order can sit on somebody's workflow 2 or 3 days before it gets moved along. So, from a time standpoint, this has really knocked it down to a teacher can go in, order, and the order's on its way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So when you're talking about some of those challenges and, not really cutting a check, but then putting that back in their payroll, what were some of the other challenges that you guys experienced with the old way of how those funds were being managed and distributed?
Right. So if they're getting it through a paycheck, one of the big things is we don't know how it's being spent. Behavior modification dollars, for instance, are to be spent on the students for incentives, classroom supplies, awards, and so on. But do we know that's happening? No.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at some grant funds, those are a totally different story. They didn't go through any payroll checks or anything, but you had the PO.
Oh,
Oops, sorry, I accidentally bumped the space bar, which was, again, I talk with my hands. So, um, so you had the purchase order process for some of the other funds we're using, and again, it's cumbersome sometimes, and especially when you're maybe I just need a $25 set of workbooks or something.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Got it. So now I want to get into a little bit more of the data that you were able to glean from the system. So just to give everybody some backdrop on what Seth came up with. When I first approached him about sharing his story, he actually went on a mission to start looking at the data points and to uncover what has been the return on their investment related to the platform. So he's going to be sharing facts and figures that he, through his analysis of the platform, came up with. But now I do want to kind of talk about, what is that process like now? And we'll get into your details. Sound good?
Yeah.
All right, great.
Okay, so what we do now with ClassWallet and with the various special funds that we're using it for at this time is to get a list of people who are going to get the funds, and we do maybe one purchase. We'll just use behavior modification as example. One purchase order for the behavior modification with the list of the teachers that are going to get that money, and they can go in and they can spend as they need, and so they could maybe do 20 different transactions till they spend down their money. But as opposed to being 20 different POs, that was one PO to a bunch of different teachers. So you really knocked off a lot of the need for purchase orders. Mm-hmm. So as you see here in this transactional breakdown, and this was funds that we have had in since the inception to, I believe I did this on February 23rd. So the amount of money that has been spent through ClassWallet through these transactions, as you see, there's $230,000. And the average approved transaction amount was $86. So when you break that down, that's a lot of transactions that you've been doing $86 purchase orders for. The other thing I was curious about was online store versus reimbursements, because that's two different options inside the platform. We had a total of 1,346 approved transactions just for the online store. So 53% of our transactions were online store, and the remainder were the reimbursements. So the online store spend, as you see, there's $182,000.
And that just kind of showcases that teachers don't like to come out of pocket. They like the convenience of being able to shop online without having to then go seek reimbursement, right?
Yeah, right. But if they have to do reimbursement, they want a simpler process to do that.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, great. Great. So the next slide that we have is really more related to one of the things that Seth just alluded to. He mentioned that his district is averaging $86.76 per transaction. And one of the things I just wanted to showcase and share with the group here is this is a year-over-year comparison of the average transaction value that's being tracked on our platform today. We did this analysis because we were curious to see what impact COVID-19 had to the average transaction value. And we came to find out that, that there was only a $4 difference. So when you look at 2020 compared to 2021, it was $106.71 compared to $102.82. But more interesting enough, when you look at the 2020 average spend, you can see trends where it really just doesn't make sense where anybody is on the chasm, because we see districts with less than 7,500 students spending over $100 per transaction. And when you look at districts from 7,500 students to 20,000 students, on average, you're spending $75 per transaction, and then it goes back up again. So there's not really a set amount per se, but we are seeing that the average spend is around $102, where Seth is at 86. So Seth, I'll let you continue on with your transaction. I just wanted to showcase, that these are some of the this is some of the data points that we are tracking within the platform to help drive efficiency and showcase how are these dollars being spent and what type of expenditure and transaction value they are.
Yeah, so going into this slide, we were talking about the online store just a couple minutes ago, and this is the breakdown on reimbursements. So of the total amount of transactions that we had over 1,100 reimbursement transactions for 46% of those transactions. But you see that the reimbursement spend is $48,000, and I believe that prior slide said online was like 180. So the percentage of the total spend on reimbursements is much lower. Still a very convenient thing for them to do this way, but definitely they do seem to like the point and click of an online store.
Yep, and much smaller in dollar value, these
Yes.
reimbursements as well.
Correct.
Which even makes the challenge even more cumbersome if you're managing it on paper.
Right. Well, and I noticed too when I'm approving reimbursements, one of the things that I noticed is teachers can be very frugal. They a lot of times these receipts I see are Family Dollar and Dollar Tree, and so it's a lot of dollar items or $2 items that that they're buying and submitting for reimbursement, and it's beneficial to the class. And I don't even think that Family Dollar or Dollar Tree takes a purchase order.
Right.
So
yep. Big couponers too, right?
Yes, right. Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Awesome.
So, and this is just a kind of a graphic on the slides we just talked about, the percentage of online versus reimbursement transactions, and then the dollar value of the two. You see that the online is much larger in dollar value, even though the transactional percentages are kind of close.
Got it.
So, and I gotta move my little picture screen here. So this slide is kind of just breaking that down a little further, that the average processing time of PO creation, invoice entry, and payment is a half an hour. That's actual like work, typing that purchase order in our ERP system, having accounts payable enter the invoice, and then the process we go through to actually cut a check. And that's a per transaction. Obviously, you don't cut a check, just one check at a time, but I guess, probably prior to me coming here 28 years ago, we might have. But I'm glad I missed those days. But that, leads into, with 2,654 transactions, 1,327 hours. That's a lot of person hours that has been saved. So, and we estimated the cost of processing transactions via the PL process to be 45 grand. So you're taking into account all the cost of personnel to do those transactions. Now, that would have been 2,654 purchase orders that we wound up doing, with a total of 53 over the span of 2.5 years we've been working with ClassWallet. Mm-hmm. So that brought the cost of transactions down to about $1,799, $1,800. So quite a difference there.
Significant savings.
Yeah. So if you see at the bottom line, there's a savings of $43,000, and that's just transactional costs.
And when you get into just even talking about the transactional cost itself, what is, how does your team feel about the process? I mean, what has it done for them and their livelihood and their experience?
Well, my team, they look at it this way, that they've got plenty of invoices still to process. And many of those invoices with different vendors, they require a little more time and attention. So if they're not having to enter some, $25 invoice for, 10 boxes of crayons, what have you, it's more time they can focus on solving those bigger issues in order for us to continue to pay other vendors on time.
Got it. So they feel like that they are spending their time towards the bigger items that are going to drive further efficiency for the organization, rather than spending their time on what we hear a lot of clients say, the death of 1,000 cuts, that it's just, it's non-significant.
Right.
So,
yeah. And I mean, I did have the initial, a lot of times you'll get this, this is taken away from jobs. No, it's just making your jobs more efficient. And the death by 1,000 cuts is exactly a good example there, that they're not getting sliced that many times.
Right. Just a little bit more, fewer nuances that they can then focus their time on.
Right.
Well, that's awesome. Anything else that you feel like would be of value before we get into a little bit more of the overview, or if there are any questions that any of our audience has, feel free to ask those. We are going to work into one of the next polls, because I'm curious, now that you've heard Seth talk about how they're distributing these funds and getting those funds in the hands of teachers. How are teachers within your organization getting non-stock supply items for their classroom? So I'm going to launch this next poll to see, and are they submitting a purchase requisition, or is there an open purchase order with a vendor? Is there a P card that they're checking out? Are you providing reimbursements, or is it none of the above? Got a lot of open POs right now, and we've got Second is purchase requisition. We'll give everybody a little bit more time to submit theirs. All right. I'll share those results so you guys can see that, but it looks like the dominant leader was an open purchase order with a vendor, with 71% of the audience leveraging that. All right. Okay. Well, one of the areas that we want to really make sure and hit home is that simply put, our goal is to really help organizations move away from paper-based work culture and improve back office efficiency while continuing to maintain a high level of purchasing oversight. As Seth alluded to, is that with their prior process, they had no way of knowing what those funds were actually being used for and what was being purchased. So what we want to help do is help, with these classroom supply and service purchases and help eliminate those back office efficiencies, free up, approximately 20 to 30% of your accounts payable staff time to be able to focus on those larger types of initiatives and projects that are going to move the needle even further, and really just, again, continue to enable those bookkeepers to focus on larger projects, and then provide everybody within the business and finance team the visibility of what are the costs of supplies to make better informed data-driven decisions, and again, just continue to provide a culture that provides a paperless environment for staff as well as administrators, because when you start looking at overwhelmingly, millennials are coming into the workforce and are going to represent more than 50% of the workforce. So as you're looking at teachers and teacher retention, these are core things that people are thinking about. It's like, why are we still in this heavily paper-based work environment when we have an immense amount of technology at our disposal. So we want to help facilitate that. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Melody, that she's going to provide an overview of the platform. And again, if any questions you guys have, feel free to enter those into the chat and we will address those. So Melody?
Thanks. Before I begin, I've been sitting here thinking a lot that today we're talking a lot about back office efficiency, but there's something else more, I think even more important here, and that's the teacher. Back in 2000, I started working with an education technology company, and my focus was in helping the teacher to be able to acquire and adopt technology, and working with the IT department and the business office to try and help that be as seamless as possible. And let me tell you, the struggle was real. For a teacher to be able to get the things that they needed quickly and nimbly was never the case. And I think today, not a lot has changed. And that was 21 years ago. And if anything, COVID has it's been an interesting journey for everyone, right? And I think it has really shown our nation how much education needs to be able to move nimbly, quickly, and be supported. And I think ClassWallet really does that. It modernizes the culture of how teachers can access funding, and yet gives you all the control that you have today with your purchase order. I think you heard Seth talk about approval workflow. You have the exact same level of control that you have, and perhaps depending on how you're doing it with an open purchase order, even more control, minus the reconciliation. But what's more important is that teachers have a view of their balance. which is something that if you're working with a purchase order and you're working with an open purchase order, and let's say you have an occasional reimbursement thrown in there to boot, well, maybe it's not your primary, but you have that happen. It's hard for a teacher to know, how much money do I have access to? And if I don't know the answer of how much money do I have access to in my day today, then it's harder for me to manage my day. If I don't know how much I have to spend for lunch, then it's hard for me to go out to lunch, right? So what you're looking at is my cell phone screen, and it's a teacher view. So this is what the teacher sees. In Seth's district, the teachers will see actually only what they have access to, but if one teacher had access to all 3 of these stipends, they would see this, but they're not really in the money flow. It's just giving them a view, a window, and a way to access those funds. And there are multiple ways for them to access those funds. We have a lot of different modules, 4 total. I'm going to focus on 2 today, reimbursements and marketplace. However, the pools of funds can be tied to the appropriate module and not tied to others. So it's very configurable and very friendly for a district to be able to configure the platform for how you need it to. So how I'm showing it may not be what you need. If you don't allow reimbursements in the district, that's fine. They will never see this link that says start a reimbursement. But that's what I'm going to do. If I'm a teacher and I'm at Walmart or the dollar store, in this case, CVS, I come out of pocket, I spend my own money, and then I go to my mobile phone. I'm going to fill out the form. And I'm just going to take a picture of the receipt. And that's right there on my desk. I'm going to just use this picture then to submit my receipt. And that's really, all that I have to do in order to file a reimbursement. I was going to unshare, just move on, but here you go. So I can select my purse. If you wanted to categorize them, we can do that as well, so that you can separate that information out in your reports and submit it. It's just that easy. Now, this receipt is going to go through a pre-approval workflow, but it also doesn't have to. Again, it's very configurable, and how it's configured is up to you. How much control you want to have is up to you. Also, you could configure it to maybe you only want to look at receipts over $5, for time savings, and maybe you're not concerned about $5 worth of fraud. So there's a lot that can be done there. So I've changed screens. Can everyone see my main screen now? Okay. So now I'm at the teacher's desktop computer. And you see I can file a reimbursement here. But I'm going to shop online. So we have 63 vendors in our marketplace today. These vendors can be configured to give you exactly what you need. Most of them are big box vendors. Amazon is behind a paywall. Most of our customers do not use Amazon. To be honest with you, if you do, it requires a lot of scrutiny. But if you're using Amazon as one of your open PO vendors, chances are it's a lot of work in reconciliation and trying to match up all of those packing slips with invoices and with the credit card payment that it's tied to. It is an accounting pain that we do eliminate. That said, we do partner with stores like Lakeshore Learning, Scholastic, really good stuff. We also have curriculum, professional learning, online tools. Quizalize, for example, is an online quiz giving program, remote tools, all kinds of things, anything and everything that they could possibly need. Office Depot and Staples are both also vendors, and you can, like I said, disclude any vendor from the marketplace as well. I'm going to shop at Office Depot. And to stay in alignment with what Seth is doing, I'm going to get some reward stickers. These are kind of cool, actually. I like these. So when I check out with my stickers, this comes back into ClassWallet for purchase. So all of these vendors have a full integration with ClassWallet. And what's important about that is you're getting the SKU level data and you're never going to pay an invoice because this teacher is going to check out, and then ClassWallet, if you approve, will pay the invoice. So we're going to manage the shipping process. We're going to manage the invoice process. And this right here is equivalent to a digital requisition. So if I use the behavior modification funds for this, I'm just going to enter the funding in there. Now, if I didn't have enough, I could top it off with my own personal credit card. We don't have teachers who come in here to shop outside of their funding, but what we do have is the ability to enable them to spend every dollar if they want. Imagine if they only had $60 left, then they could top it off with the $1.35 of their own money. And we all know teachers spend their own money. This year, I predict they are going to spend more money out of pocket than ever before, because as they are coming back to school and going for a new school year, and they are faced with continuous unknown challenges and a lot of learning loss, and being faced with addressing that learning loss, they're going to need things that nobody has yet thought of yet. And so we are facing an unpredictable upcoming and current school year. So I'm going to take this out of the behavior modification funds. I'll call it.
And Melody, we had a question in the reimbursement example. Who pays the funds directly back to the employee, the district or ClassWallet?
Excellent. And I'm going there next.
Okay.
So on this, I have submitted my order. This is my digital requisition as a teacher. So I just submitted it for approval, and it's going to go through an approval workflow. Now on the reimbursement, it is the same, where we are going to facilitate that payment. But here, neither of those things will happen. Did it refresh for me? There it goes. Until an approval workflow has taken place. If you want it to, like I said. So it's all configurable. Another option is what a lot of our customers do. I don't know why it's not refreshing. Okay, there we go. What a lot of our customers do is pre-approve the reimbursements, but not the marketplace. And they keep the marketplace tight to where the teacher can't go off the rails. For example, there is nothing that a teacher could get at scholastic.com that would be out of boundary. So it's you know, there are some things to think about, and with that comes the thoughts of workflow. So how much time you want to spend on the front end or on the back end in reports, which we'll get to soon. So here are the two orders that we've placed. The behavior modification funds order in the marketplace is here. So there's our stickers, our reward stickers. I can approve these. I could also reject them, and I can annotate why. The teacher will get an email notification. Your order has been approved. ClassWallet will manage the shipping. ClassWallet will pay the vendor. Here is the reimbursement. Here's the actual receipt from my desk that we took a picture of. I can look at this receipt and say, look, this teacher bought a mask. That's on the list of what I allow. What is this nasal spray? 12-hour nasal spray. And now I can email the teacher and start a conversation. Is this for a science project or personal? And then I can make a partial approval based on my decision. Now the teacher will be reimbursed by ClassWallet out of the ClassWallet funds for $5.99. The teacher will also be notified and emailed. So let's go over to reports. So when I look at reports, I want to make a little side note here that the teachers also have their own reports. So they can see what is waiting for approval, what has been approved, what's on the way. But your reports give you everything that we just did. Here's our reward stickers. Here's our receipt. There's a variety of ways that we can look at this, such as by date range, by just one teacher, by just one distribution. If I wanted to look just at the Head Start grant, there's the one expenditure we made on that grant. Or I could look at the other one, which was the behavioral, right? There's the other one that we made on the behavioral. So it will separate it out. And on the front end, we can tie each of these buckets of money to the appropriate account codes so that it matches up with everything happening in your system. We can then pull reports. And it comes out into a spreadsheet. So there's our reward stickers, our CVS receipt, other things that I've been buying lately. And you know, all of the buckets. So it can even separate this out. For example, if I were to pull it up for just one distribution, the report would have just this with the one line item in it, right? So it really is, and it's fully reconciled because we go against the funds distributed, against what has been spent. So there is no back-end reconciliation. This is front-end reconciled, if that makes sense.
And Melody, there was a question. Can the pricing for a vendor like Office Depot be tied to our own district's contract, or does it have to default to ClassWallet's contract pricing with Office Depot?
So it defaults to ours, which is because we are integrated with that catalog. So we're not able to integrate with your catalog. You know, suffice it to say that our goal here is not to replace the large transactions that you may be getting a lot of cost savings on things. You know, those contracts tend to give you savings on only certain things, like perhaps paper. And if you're going to order a truckload of paper, it is not a ClassWallet expenditure. What we're talking about here is a very small amount of things. It's the things that the teacher needs to nimbly access. I think we noted on Seth's data that the average purchase size, sorry, that's my dog shifting. You all hear that noise? She's rolling over and her sleeping. You know, the average purchase size is about $58. Was that what I remember seeing?
$86.
$86. So these are generally small things, just to give them freedom and flexibility. If you have something bigger that you're concerned about contract pricing with, then you just wouldn't do that on ClassWallet. Alternatively, if you have a teacher that needed to do that, we do have other ways. They can access that by reimbursement. They can also access that by debit card. Those are typically one-off scenarios. A couple of other interesting things that we do are we set expiration dates if needed against funds so that they're auto reconciled at a certain cutoff date. And then the teacher accounts revert to zero on those dates. Seth, how do you handle your cutoff dates?
Right now, I do it kind of manually because it depends on the funding source. So usually, let's say, for instance, our Head Start grant, they tell me that, okay, we have to be either spent or brought back home by November 1st. And so then I would go in and do that. But going forward, using that ability would make it a lot simpler on me.
Yeah.
I'm just a bit of a control freak. So,
so what happens if you definitely speak with your account manager, because what happens is the teachers will get 4 emails leading up to that cutoff date that remind them how much money they have left to spend and what the cutoff date is, and then announces it. So it helps them streamline it too.
and that's a good idea too, because when I was looking over a balance report, and we're getting close to the end of our school year, it is a good idea to start sending them some emails saying, hey, use up this money, it's there for you to use. So
That's right.
Yeah. And that said, ClassWallet comes in handy for things that are happening on the fly, for financial dollars that need to be spent, right? We ultimately want them to spend this money. You want this money to do the good that it's been earmarked for.
Right.
And so we do see a lot of that. And that's what changes the culture. The millennials especially are used to being, able to log in their phones, get what they need. Their heads are always in their phones, but they're shopping, they're getting what they need. It's a very normal course of business. But I tell you, I'm almost 50 and it's a normal course of business for me too. I mean, my head's in my phone shopping, at least. Well, I try not to do it every day.
Yep. And Seth, you mentioned when we were talking last week that you were looking at other areas to leverage ClassWallet. Can you kind of shed a little bit of light of some other areas that you're looking to expand use of the platform?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the biggest things we're discussing right now is petty cash. It has been a thorn on our sides for years. With all our school buildings, that's 50 accounts, actual checking accounts that we're paying fees on to a bank every month. And that adds up. Now, I mean, a budget as large as ours, it may not look like much, but when you're doing everything you can to be fiscally prudent, it's something to look into. So we are looking into the possibility of replacing our petty cash with ClassWallet, and so I haven't gotten it all the way through the chain of command yet, but I did introduce it just the other day to our treasurer, and so we'll see what questions he has and what he wants to do going forward. But it's something that we definitely thought, a few of us put some thought into how to go about it, and we think we've got a solid idea. So I would say and that would be about $800 a month in savings.
Yeah. Hey, like you said, every little bit helps because it all adds up, unfortunately, throughout time. So I know that we're getting short on time, but I did want to have you talk a little bit about, what type of lift did it take for you guys to implement ClassWallet? Because I'm sure that some folks on the line are going, how difficult is this to launch and get it up and running? Can you kind of showcase and tell a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, actually getting it going was very simple. And I've been in a lot of implementation projects throughout my career, and getting it going I thought was very simple. We sent a file over to the ClassWallet team with all of our teacher information, what their email is, what their school is, the school addresses. We got that all over to ClassWallet, and ClassWallet put that in place. So all our people were set up by ClassWallet. That was a spreadsheet we downloaded from our system. So that was pretty simple. Then from there, we were like, okay, well, how are we going to use this? So we did a little testing. Had a couple of our central office staff kind of test it out, put some money in it and said, okay, spend, see how convenient it is for you. It passed that test. And so then we started figuring out, oh, hey, we can use it for this, we can use it for that. And so as we did that, it helped us to kind of, I guess, say softly roll it out. as opposed to saying to all these schools, hey, we're going to take a part of your instructional supply budget and put it here. We didn't want to do that to them because, budgets are limited anyway. So that's why we decided to go with the special funds, and then grow it from there. So we're still growing it. As a matter of fact, somebody came to me today and said, this funding's coming in. I think we should do ClassWallet instead of this. Absolutely. And as far as training goes, ClassWallet sent out information to our teachers. We have a document that we use if a new teacher comes on, that explains it to them, and a new teacher might email or call us, and we'll walk them through, and they're like, oh wow, this is cool. So it's been really simple. One of the simplest things that I've personally been involved in an implementation of.
Awesome. Now we got a question. What ERP system does Toledo use? And is there an integration between the ERP and ClassWallet?
Right. So we are using Power School Business Plus. And there's not necessarily what I would call an integration, but when you look at the way we do this, we're funding a ClassWallet account in advance. So we're doing one purchase order to ClassWallet, say for a number of teachers. And so it's already hitting our ledger the minute we've done that one purchase order for all those teachers. So let's say I'm sending $20,000 over to ClassWallet to be spread amongst, 20 teachers. I'm just throwing numbers out there, but that dollar amount has already hit my ledger. So after that, they will go in and spend, and then you can use the reports that are generated from ClassWallet to tie it back to your ledgers. And what I do is I can take those reports by distribution and plug it into or attach it to the original purchase order.
Got it. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, you're welcome. And sorry, I had a slight distraction there when I was talking. So
that's okay. That's okay. That's okay. And, we're all operating in lots of different distractions with dogs, with people coming to doors. I mean, it's a new world that we're living in. So now, as far as your experience with our support, how has that been?
Oh, it's been fantastic. I send an email out to them when I need them, and they respond very quickly. That first of all, you get an automatic response that says, hey, we're looking into this. And they are. And usually they've come up with a solution to any issue very quickly. I really haven't had any big issues or anything, but most of the time if I'm contacting support, it's can you set up somebody that's perhaps a new user? Because as far as I know, you guys are still doing the user setups. I don't think I have that control.
It's on the roadmap.
So if I get a new user that we didn't already have in the initial upload, then I send it right over and they get it done pretty quickly. And now what I do have control over is like what school the user's at, which I think is nice because, as you know, every year teachers move around school to school. So when somebody lets me know that, hey, I'm not at this school anymore, okay, I've got it done in 10 seconds.
Perfect. Well, I know that we're coming up on time. Any other questions that anybody may have for Seth? I do have one last poll, just asking for general feedback because we like having these sessions and we want to have more of these types of sessions, especially when we can have a client and a user showcase, how successful they've been and what their best practices are. But if there are any other questions, please continue to submit those. I'll continue to monitor that. And we will do our last poll. And just kind of rating this presentation. And depending upon where you are, it may not be cold outside. And if it's warm outside, lucky you. But curious to hear your feedback on a scale of 1 to 5. How would you rate this presentation? 5 with being outstanding, and 1, you'd rather be sitting out in the cold rather than online in this meeting. Well, we haven't gotten a 1 yet, so that's good, Seth. We did get a 3. Love to hear that. And how we can improve. All right, great. Thank you guys for answering that question. 67% gave us a 5. All right. And then our final poll is based upon what you've learned today is, do you think that ClassWallet would be a fit at your organization? And we'll be following up with everybody as a result of today's session, and reaching out and talking about any specific questions that you may have. Are happy to set up a demo and go and specifically go into depth more about specific use cases or specific funds that you may have that you're trying to manage and distribute. So we will be following up with everybody as a result. And it looks like we've got one more question. Can Seth speak to Toledo's procedures when there are unspent funds?
Oh, absolutely. So when there are unspent funds at the end of the year, I will pull it out of each individual purse and put it back into our main account, and then I will ask ClassWallet to send us back the difference or whatever's available, whatever's still available. We'll get that back and we'll receipt it back into the accounts for which we had charged on our ledgers.
And Tito, let me know if that answers your question or if you have a follow-up question. When you are receiving those, are you guys redistributing those as well, or?
No, it'll get receipted right back to the ledger account it came from. So whatever account we took behavior modification from, it's where it's going to go back to. And in that case, behavior modification is general fund, and so that would just close out that part of the general fund for the year. And then in the new year, we will get, a fresh supply of behavior modifications going out based on what our special education department asks us to send out.
Got it. And then we had another question. Are there any fees involved with the transfer?
No, there are.
And there are no fees.
Yeah, there are no fees for me to get the money back.
And then we had a question about another session at 1 p.m. And unfortunately, there isn't a session at 1. We did see that there was an issue with Zoom that had, rather than Eastern Standard Time, had Central Time. So, James, if there's, I can send a recording of this session. And if you want to spend some one-on-one time, we're happy to arrange that as well. I do apologize if there was confusion. Okay, any other questions? Looks like, oh, okay. James, I will send you a copy of the recording. All right. Any other questions? We do appreciate everybody's time and their engagement in asking a bunch of questions. We love questions. But if there's no more questions, you've got my contact information here if you want to follow up with me on specific questions that y'all may have. But I want to thank everybody, and thank you, Seth, for giving us an hour of your time and showcasing all the good that you guys are doing over at Toledo.
You're very welcome, and thank you.
Awesome. Everybody, enjoy your St. Patty's Day, and make sure if you're out and about, pinch somebody that's not wearing green, but don't pinch them too hard. Right? Perfect.
There you go.
I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.